Roll,
Welcome to the
baby.
Tow.Club Industry Podcast. My name is Art. You guys have been following us. I appreciate it very much. Today I have a guest I'm very excited about, and that's Christopher Young from Tow Truck Tech, who I have admired for quite some time, and I have followed his content online, and I suggest you do the same. And before we get started here, I want to remind everybody that all of the links in the video description for Chris and all of his wonderful content that he's been putting out will be in the video description, and I suggest you take a look and subscribe. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. It's been a long time coming, and it's nice to have people that are in the industry that are interested in actually providing resources for our industry. And based on some of the things I've seen you publish, I think you're the right man for the job. So, hey, so obviously, I'm a fan of what you do, but I haven't known you for a great deal of time. And would you mind maybe telling me a little bit about yourself and your background in automotive?
So I've been in the towing business or towing and roadside and repossession for about 30 years. I spent 20 years repossessing cars. Of that 20, I spent 10 owning a repossession agency. For the last 15 years, I've been creating content for, networks and whoever's needed it. When I say networks, I mean motor clubs, the
Okay.
folks everyone hates, but that's where
Yeah.
most of the OEM work comes from motor clubs, and motor
Right.
clubs are traditionally who develop the training. So I've been doing work for motor clubs, developing training. And then in the middle of all that, for about 8 years, I went through the agony of insuring towing companies, because I've had an insurance license since 91.
Oh,
So my whole family is in insurance, and I found my way into the insurance business and spent 8 years doing that. And that 8 years was rougher than repossessing cars.
well, I'm sure I'm not the first one to tell you, as a tower myself, whenever like insurance renewal time comes around, everybody's on eggshells because they're looking back at their history saying, oh man, that claim's going to cost me, or or what have you. So yeah, it's insurance is an anxiety inducing kind of thing for towers, no doubt, man. And it sounds like a lot of aspects of this industry. I don't think, met anyone who's sort of worked in and adjacent to the industry in so many ways like you. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's probably other people out there that have done it, but it's the number is small. It really is small for the number of guys that see it in a global sense from a bunch of different angles.
Small audience.
Yeah.
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 No, I could see that. I could see that. So, elaborate a little bit on what is taking up all your bandwidth now, like tow truck tech. Obviously, I'm sure you've got your plate full with that. What can you explain to the listeners, like kind of what your goal with tow truck tech is and what resources? I think it's wonderful, but if you could explain to people why you think they should be taking advantage of some of the resources and education you're offering.
Well, it's interesting because the whole thing started out as proving a point. And the point I was trying to prove was that this training needs to move to social media, because the audience in towing is on social media. They spend a lot of time on social media, and we've done a lot of research as to where our audience is, where our viewers are coming from. And I'm able to see some of the analytics of content I've created for clients, motor clubs, and there's no viewership on the content. I mean, don't get me wrong, when I develop content for them, we use their in-house AV guys, and they're very well produced. They're more client facing, they're highly polished, they're not really engaging videos like I create engaging videos so folks will watch the content. And they don't have really high view count. And I knew that the message wasn't getting out there, because I was talking to folks at tow shows that I recognized back from when I used to actually physically train at the tow shows.
Got it.
And I'd see guys I'd trained in the past just walking around, and they're like, hey, I need information on this, or I need information on that. I'm like, it's there in the portal. All you have to do is go there and get it. And like, I don't even know the portal exists.
Right.
So a Jero is one of the clients I've been writing content for, and they are the only one that has a completely open portal. No one else has an open portal. Allstate doesn't, Urgently doesn't, no one does. If you want to get in their portal, their password protected, and you have to be on their provider list. So I knew that Agero was getting more views than the rest of them. And I have little by little gotten into the rest of the portals out there. So I've got access to all of them except Allstate. And it's the content is not that good. And I'm not saying it because we didn't produce it. It's just, it's not good content. They haven't gone to the links that we've gone, at Agero. And I've gone to greater lengths than Agero ever has in creating content. So, I feel like what we do is really, really good content, and I made it engaging. But anyway, so I wanted to prove a point that, if we went to social media, we'd get more views. And in 18 months, we have over 9 million views collectively on all platforms. And it's never been done in towing. I don't know if no one's ever thought about going to social media with training and instructional content, but it's never been done. The only folks that are in towing that are doing anything on social media it's entertainment. And I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's some guys out there that are creating some really, really cool recovery videos.
Right.
And I mean, they get a lot of views, but that's not instructional stuff. That's entertainment. That's long form entertainment on YouTube.
Right.
So, we decided to go the short form route on TikTok and Instagram, and also do long form content on YouTube. And our TikTok and Instagram, I think our view differential is 17,000 to 1.
Wow.
For every one view we get on TikTok, we get 17,000 on the other ones.
Oh.
On Instagram and TikTok.
Okay.
And then we run an average of about 18 or 19,000 views per day.
That's impressive. And I wanted to follow up with you about that. I mean, it sounds to me like you looked at the numbers pretty carefully, but one of my observations, and maybe this supports what you're talking about or not, is that it seems to me that attention spans are sort of like diminishing as it relates to online content, and that people now are more likely to watch something if it's shorter as opposed to it being longer. Is that part of the strategy?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And it's pretty interesting because I had a client do some research on this very thing, and they published it. And then I went back to them and said, hey, you guys are publishing written work where you are acknowledging that people are going to social media looking for answers, but you will not take your own stuff to social media. And the answer was, we don't have the resources. And it's like, you don't need the resources. I have the resources. And
Right.
We're doing this. This is me and one guy. So it's not like this requires a lot of effort from a big team of people. Now, I have talked with companies, and we've got a couple conversations going with a couple of actual big corporations about working with them on their social media. They've seen stuff that we've developed, and they're asking us to, collaborate with them, or whatever their corporate term is for it. But they're interested in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we talk to these places, and they've got 4, 5, 6 people, and they have no social media presence. There's not a single body in there that understands it. But going back to the short attention spans, that was one of the things that they had cited, was that when people are looking for an answer, like right now, they're going to TikTok and Instagram, and then they're going to YouTube. And then, if you're willing to sit around and listen to, the origins of this glove box door in a 1983 Skylark, YouTube's your deal. If you want to know how to put an F-150 Lightning into neutral, you want to do it on TikTok, because quick.
Right. 30 seconds, whatever.
Yeah. On TikTok and Instagram, we try to stay under 90 seconds.
Got it. Yeah. No, that sounds like that's part of the reason, at the very least, part of the reason why your viewership numbers are impressive, is because you're understanding how to cram valuable content into a short period of time. In my business, on the towing side, we do the same thing. We do instructional videos for property managers about, how they should address certain parking issues, what to expect if they do X, and what to expect if they do Y and Z. And we also, have sort of an emphasis on keeping the content, like, no one's going to watch a 5-minute video. I mean, unless they're super interested in what it's about. But it seems to me that the numbers favor that. I'm not necessarily an expert, but you notice trends. And if you spend a little bit of time online and you go to these short videos, I mean, I can't remember seeing one over 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Like
No.
they're pretty short. So
and a pretty good example of what we experienced in that was we had that mobile EV charger series that we had a lot of viewership on, and we did a long form build on it on YouTube, and it was like 12 minutes,
right.
But that was the forum for showing folks how to put that thing together.
Sure.
When we were doing it on TikTok and Instagram, we were getting a lot of views on it, but it was like a series of really quick. And
Right.
I had people reaching out to me like, hey, I don't understand this. I'm like, go to the YouTube. We do it long form there. And then they went there and immediately they had it. They were on it.
So you cropped it for those other platforms, but then, with the understanding that, hey, you can go watch the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably a good play. And by the way, I want to talk about that because that was something that made for interesting conversation online. And so I'll get to that here in a second, because that was something that I thought was sort of the catalyst to be able to have a conversation with you. Is like, okay, here's a guy that's like trying to help and provide this thing, and the comments are like, I don't like electric vehicles, like stop it. It's like, man, nobody asked you, man. Like, this is just something to help you out,
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, but that kind of brings me to my next point. But I do want to circle back to that, is like, when you consider the sort of online comments, and oftentimes they're critical or throwing shade at electrics or hybrids. Oftentimes, some of the content you're producing is helping towers understand how these cars work. And I wanted to see if you could talk about some of the challenges in terms of, like, because when I read the comments, and I don't want to paint the whole industry with one brush. I always pride myself on not doing that and appreciating the person that stands out from the majority, particularly when I think they're right. But it's hard not to notice comments that are throwing shade at the cars. But it's like, hey man, I'm not touting the cars. I'm showing you how to work on these things. I'm agnostic here. But what do you think the challenges are? Because again, you published a video showing towers how, to put a reasonably priced mobile charging solution together. And I got quite a bit of entertainment, if I'm being honest with you, of reading, kind of people's responses to this. So what do you think the challenges are there? I mean, how do you think this is going to go?
Are you talking about with electric vehicles in general?
With electric vehicles, but particularly the industry's response to them. Like I said, just judging by that one video you published, like, what do you think we need to do? Do you think the increase in the amount of new vehicles needs to be realized before our industry starts moving? I always gripe and say, how come towers are last to adopt new technology? We're always last. So I'm curious to how you feel about this.
Because we're the last to get information on them. It's really hard to embrace technology that you don't understand and no one's willing to help you with. So I'd say the biggest hurdle we have right now is OEM support. The OEMs lean on the motor clubs because the motor clubs are their experts.
Right.
But when you look at the motor clubs, there's no one inside the motor club that understands towing. I mean, they're an aggregator of services, and they move the tow from A to B. They move the work from the OEM to the tower to the destination.
Okay.
And there's no one inside of the motor clubs that has any extensive auto experience. And that's kind of how I've thrived in the space. Is I'm kind of their go-to guy. They can call me and ask me a bunch of questions, and they think they're really silly, and it's like I just give them straight up answers. And if I think it's not going to work, I just tell them. I don't try to be nice about it. Like, it's not going to work, and this is why it's not going to work. And then, probably 90 times out of 100, it's they're going to go their own way. And then in 6 months, we're having the conversation why doesn't this work? It's like for the same reason it didn't work months ago. It's the same answer. Nothing's changed. So, when we're not getting information from OEMs through motor clubs or directly from OEMs, expecting tow operators to just go out and handle the car, just get it done, not going to happen.
Yeah.
The cars are becoming way too involved. I've had so many conversations in the last 6 weeks about European EVs and what we are not allowed to do on them anymore. I'm getting really concerned with the number of damages that are out there in the future and how towers are going to handle these cars. I mean, it's gonna require some special equipment, and there's some special equipment out there that, it's another thing people like to make fun of, but it's a costly solution. But I see it as it's going to be what's required, and with more equipment comes more money, and I don't know where that money is in the equation.
Yeah, that is a legitimate, that argument has merit. How am I going to fund the infrastructure to provide support for these vehicles? That is a legit question. I've always been, I suppose, a little bit critical of my own industry, just because number one, the reluctance to embrace new ideas, and number two, oftentimes I hear the gripes from other owners is like, I don't want to buy this new truck. I don't want, 20 years ago, the argument from the heavy duty guys was, I don't want to buy a rotator. I can do it with the stick boom. I can do it with the integrated fixed boom. I don't want a rotator. And I feel like it took a couple decades for these guys to figure out, hey man, I can do the job easier, safer, faster, possibly in many cases with this rotator, so to speak. But following up to what you said, obviously there's a growing complexity for new cars, namely the electric vehicles, all the different features. I'm wondering, and you'll have to forgive me, I may have missed this, but I'm wondering if you have produced or plan to produce content concerning the different charger plugs, because this is something that I read about with, online, just general comments like, oh, J1772 used to be really common, and now the electric vehicle standard for North America is the utilization of the Tesla plug. I guess they call it NACS now,
Yep.
North American Charging Standard. Do you plan to do a tutorial for that?
We probably will. We're going to do another build series on the mobile EV charger,
Okay.
because Westinghouse reached out to us, because Westinghouse was a generator we used on ours,
Okay.
and they wanted to do some collaboration, some partnership on something, and I told them we were going to give that one away, but I didn't really want to give that one away and have them be a sponsor because I altered it. And
Got it.
I don't feel right about giving away an altered generator and having them sponsored. I have no problem giving away an altered generator because everything we did to it's up to par, but I don't want to do it in Westinghouse's name. So they've actually sent us another generator,
Nice.
and we are going to do another build series. And I think we're going to address it in that series. We're going to talk about that more, but it's really just becoming a moot point because from what I understand, by 2025, 2026, NACS is going to be in everything in North America. And it's not even going to be a talking point anymore. It's going to be,
Right.
You're going to be adapting backwards into J1772. And that's one of the reasons why when we built that, I went with Tesla's universal wall connector, because we had both options in it.
Got it.
And if you had to use a 1772, we had the availability to do it, but it future-proofed that build in that, years down the road, everything you plug into is going to be NACS.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we will cover that. There's actually a guy on YouTube, forget what his channel is, but he's got a really, really good channel, and just about all he covers is chargers. He's always talking about wall connectors and everything. I mean, he is the foremost expert on that. So
Right.
I might see if I can't get a hold of him and have him explain it to everybody.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I mean, whatever information that's out there that could be helpful to the industry. And I only ask about that because, again, some of the comments I see are like, oh, if this guy runs out of charge and I need to tow him to the charging station, I don't know enough about the plugs. I don't know if that station I'm taking him to has the correct plug. He may or may not know. And the roadside experience for an EV owner, if they're out of charge and they, like let's say they have a NAX plug car and they go and all that charger has is a 1772 or Chedemo or whatever plug. I feel like as towers, we probably would benefit from that content, so we can learn, what the correct application is for.
Yeah, and that's another discussion that needs to come from the OEMs. So, and it's actually interesting you bring up that charging network subject. So a lot of this out of range deal, these out of range events on these EVs in mobile charging situations, a lot of that doesn't come through motor clubs, because motor clubs haven't figured out how to put that thing together. And the reason why they haven't figured out how to put it together is because they're partnering with these $30,000-$40,000 solutions, and nobody in the towing business is interested in that. They're not even interested in a $10,000 solution. That's why when we did that, and our all-in cost for really high quality parts was $3,200,
Right.
that got a lot of attention, because it's like, oh, I'll take a run at this for $3,200. And if it doesn't work, I'll just sell off all the parts and I may get back $2,800. So yeah, I'll make a run at it for that price, or I'll have it available so it's sitting there in the future when the need may or may not arise. But then I also have a generator I can use for whatever I need to use it for. So the motor clubs have never developed a mobile EV charging solution at all for any client ever. It's never happened. They've made arrangements to get, units for certain towers to use, but nothing's ever happened with it, because there's no one out there to do it. And I actually had a conversation at the tow show with one of the OEMs about this, and we're going to make a run at trying to help them get something developed for some pilot program markets. And I had another conversation with someone in Detroit about it a couple weeks ago, and I think I'm going to try to piggyback them on each other, but it's going to involve me having to give them some units to test out in the car so they can validate that, the stuff works. Because naturally they're going to be told, oh, this $35,000 solution, that one works. Well, my $3,500 solution works. Every car I plugged it into, it charges. But but where the hang up on this is that we don't have enough information on the cars. So when the high voltage side goes down and it's not supporting low voltage, then low voltage side goes down, then we have to jump low voltage to even access the car in most cases.
Right, to be able to charge the high voltage.
To close the contactor so we can charge high voltage.
Right.
And again, that's more information we need. And the OEM I talked with over the weekend, I told them, I was like, hey, we can put the whole thing together, but we need a lot of education on cars, and you have to be willing to step up and let us come in and develop training and support it annually and get it going. But we can absolutely get it going. It's just going to take some work, but we can get there with it.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Hey,